we show for 4 patients 6 hours after the meals, the glucose values in different 6 days of the glucose response after the meals. And as we can see in the first column, we see a normoglycemic individual, and in another column, we see prediabetes individuals. And these cues are very illustrative because emphasize the complexity of the data collected in quasi-continuous real time in digital health, in this case for a continuous glucose monitor, and emphasize that we have a large intra-individual variability and a lot of variability across the individuals, and we require new data analytics methods to understand the complexity of this data. And the most important discussion of this slide, the information collected in digital health is functional and multi-level because we collect several repeated measures per individual.
Sorry, Marcus, can I ask a question here?
Yes, of course.
So is the left column, does the left column represent a healthy person and the right one a pre-diabetic person?
Yes. The 4 patients are not diabetes. In the first column are normoglycemic individuals, and in the second column are prediabetes individual patients with elevated risk of diabetes, but in all cases are healthy individuals.
Okay, I see. All right. By the way, to the audience here, please feel free to ask questions in the middle of the slides. I'm sure Marcus is also fine with that. That will just help keeping the presentation, like keeping this seminar more engaging. So you can also, if you have questions, you can also write in the chat if that's what you prefer. And if you do that, then I will make sure to address them with Marcus.
Yes, and here for 4 patients in different 6 days and 6 hours after the meal, 360 minutes, we observe the glucose evolve over the time, and the main message of this slide is that information in digital health is functional because we collect continuous information over the time, and it's multi-level because we observe several measures per individual.
Right, yeah.
And here is another example in the case of LA's disease. This is the case of data of a single patient. For a single patient, we record during the whole day when the smartphone is wear, the hands movement. In the axis X and Y, we have 2 angles, and we have the hands movement of a single LA's patient during 6 different days, and we can see as the disease the progression correlate with the changes in the variability patterns of the hands movement and the less trajectories that we are collected over the time. And well, here it's important to emphasize that this is completely normal that the variability reduces now because LA's disease is a neurodegenerative disease, and also there are a decline in the functional capacity of the patients. Here, the important measure is what with a smartphone that have a low cost, we can monitor the progression of the disease in an invasive way, and we can obtain more accuracy characterization of the disease progression that very cost medical tests that involve measure the lung function or other components of the functional capacity of an individual. And surely the most important people in the field of functional data analysis and wearable device in the latest 20 years is Ciprian Craisinou for the people interested from the Johns Hopkins University, and for the people interested in the functional data analysis for wearable data analysis, we are lucky because recently the first book in this area have appeared by Ciprian Craisinou, Jeff Golmins, and Andres Leroux and RGQ. And in this paper, we can see the system techniques, but this is the standard functional data analysis. If we back to these glucose trajectories after the meals of 4 patients, 2 normoglycemic and 2 prediabetes, we are analyzing here the patients in quasi-standardized conditions because we are examining the glucose response after the dinners, and there are in quasi-standardized conditions, but in real-world medical data, the patients are in free living conditions, and we cannot compare directly the time series across the patients because there are, for example, the time records can have different length, durations. The patients take different meals, and there are not standardized conditions. There are important chronological difference, and we cannot apply in some cases, except when the patients are in standardized conditions, these standard functional data techniques. And to summarize, because we cannot apply these standard functional data techniques, emphasize that the time series can have different lengths. The individual can be in different conditions. For example, I can take a lunch and running before, and it's very complex compare the profiles directly from the time series in a lot of context in digital health data. In the literature, to overcome this limitation that you cannot analyze directly the time series or the stochastic process for the time series, there are several alternatives. In continuous glucose monitoring data, the most popular is using compositional methods that basically they define some intensity or target areas. For example, in case of diabetes, the proportion of the time that the patient is in hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia, and they construct for each patient a representation that they quantify the proportion in different targets. For example, the proportion of time in hypoglycemia, normal glucose concentration, hyperglycemia. And these methods are very intuitive because for different intensities, you have a proportion of time that the individual is about these intensities, but also have the limitations that can discard a lot of information because we are summarizing the information of the time series, the distributional representation of the time series in intervals. Another naive solution that is proposed in the literature is consider the samples of the time series. For example, we can summarize the time series with the sample mean or the standard deviation, but of course, with these metrics, we discard a lot of information about the dynamic of the time series and the distributional patterns, and even it's intuitive and it's implementable in a lot of devices, we have a limited picture about the physical activity of the individual. And our solution to obtain a high-level representations of the physical activity, the individual activity in each wearable sensor is the using of functional distributional representations. 3 years ago, we proposed for the first time the use of functional distributional representations to analyze wearable data. And the high-level idea of this approximation is the next. We have, for example, here in the panel of the left, we have two time series of two patients. One is diabetes, this patient is diabetes, and this is normoglycemic. And we have the stochastic process over the time series. And to summarize and create a comparable profile across individuals, the idea that we consider is summarize these profiles with the marginal probability distribution that can be the density function or the quantile function. And basically, we transform the time series in the marginal representations of the probability distribution, for example, density functions, quantile functions, or even the probability distributions. And here, for example, for these two patients, we examine the marginal density function estimated from this time series. This is an intelligent representation of this because this method is highly interpretable, because for each concentration of glucose, we have a surrogate measure of the proportion of time that the individual is over this range. And this is a continuous extension of compositional metrics. And as an inconvenience of this, that is very high interpretation, unless from a graphical perspective, is that the density functions are statistical objects defined in a space without vector value structure, and we cannot using standard linear functional data methods to analyze these statistical objects. And another representation can be using the quantile functions, but the quantile functions take values in a space with a vector value structure, but the range, the domain of the quantile value and the probability is individualized, and it's not easy to compare the probabilities across individuals. And the density is really interpretable for each scientific application. Here, for example, we examine in the CGN data from the EGIS study the 580 patients with continuous glucose monitoring and their corresponding density function of the CGN time series and the quantile functions. And now the new biomarkers that we consider in digital health are the density function of the quantile functions of the time series as surrogate approximation of the physiological signals. Here we have another technical problem because in the digital health area, the biomarkers are estimated from the time series, and they have the 10 uncertainty to estimate, for example, the density function for the time series, and we must aggregate this uncertainty in the different uncertainty quantification methods that we consider. For example, when we use in these biomarkers to predict clinical outcomes, we must incorporate the uncertainty to estimate the density function, And now we are working active in new methods in this area based on Bayesian methods to aggregate this uncertainty to estimation of the digital health representation. We also generalize these distributional representations for the multivariate case, because if we consider the marginal distribution function, we are omitting the sequential of the events, of the clinical events over the time, and a naive alternative to incorporate the dynamic of the glucose in more broader sense is consider the glucose, the speed of glucose, the first derivative or another derivative, and with this with this derivative and the glucose representations over the time, estimate the marginal distribution functions. And for example, here we show in the axis X, in these head maps, in the density function dimensional function estimators, the glucose concentration in the axis X, and in the axis Y, we see the speed of glucose. And in these are 3 patients, and the corresponding to density functions of 3 patients, 10 years before in the AEGIS study from Spain, and at the beginning of the study, when was estimated these density representations, these 3 individuals are not diabetes, and after 10 years, these 2 individuals develop diabetes, and these not develop diabetes. And clearly, we can show that there are changes in the baseline distributional patterns that are corresponding with the risk to develop diabetes with the pass of the time. And this is very important because now in the new digital health area, we are summarizing the information with digital biomarkers, and we are evolved to summarize the glucose profiles with the numbers, and we transform with the complex patient representations based on medical images, as we can see in this figure. For example, in physical activity, we can calculate acceleration in the 3 axes, and we can establish regression models for this type of distributional representations. For example, here we have a functional coefficients to predict a clinical outcome that is related with the dementia. And with this distributional representation, we can also aggregate the spatial information, for example, in physical activity, that allow the acceleration of the 3 axes. And also we can interpret, these models are highly interpretable, and unlike to another techniques that using to summarize the time series, for example, recurrent neural networks, because we can obtain a measure for each value of the biomarker, and is highly interpretable. And for example, here even we can obtain a p-value plot in the spatial information of physical activity that indicate in what areas of the human movement is informative or no for predict dementia, the localization of the human movement. And also, and the important message of this introductory part is that traditionally in diabetes, for example, the patient status is summarized with numbers, for example, with the biomarkers such as glycosylate hemoglobin, A1C variable, or fasting plasma glucose. And now we evolve to functional representation of the patients that many times take values in a nonlinear space that without better value structure. And for example, with this new measure, we have a broad sense to examine the patient change. For example, this is the transition with the density functions of 2 patients that evolved from the pre-diabetes status to diabetes status after 5 years. In red is after 5 years in diabetes status, and in blue is in pre-diabetes status. And you must understand that in medicine we use numbers to summarize the patient information, and now we evolve to mathematical functions. And we can capture more and more information about the patient status and do new preventive medicine research and clinical scores with these new digital biomarkers. And now I will introduce mathematically the definition of these distributional representations. We back to the previous slide, and we see the right time series of the glucose over the times for these 2 patients. The first is normal glycemic, and this is prediabetes. And the idea is consider the marginal probability distribution of these time series as a functional representations. And now I introduce the mathematical details of this representation. For a single patient, we suppose that observe a time series in m time points and m values, and we consider this definition as a distribution function that we obtain n observations of the time series for a latent stochastic process y, And we consider this formula to define this integrated formula to define the marginal probability distribution function. And in the practice, of course, we observe the time series in n time points. We don't observe a continuous stochastic process. We must estimate from the data, for example, with a non-parametric kernel density estimator that involves some smoothing parameters that in this case of dependent data is more challenging to estimate accurately because we must take into account the correlation structure of the time series. But basically, we estimate the density and the distribution of the quantile functions for the time series. In the case of physical activity, the definition is a bit more complex because the latent probability distribution is a mixture between atom of probability that corresponding to the inactivity time and an activity part of the human movement. In physical activity, we are inactive in some time periods, and in other periods are active, and the probability distribution is a mixture, and we must take into account this in the definition and introduce the probability distribution. We have, in this case, we change a bit the notation. We have a time series of n elements, and we define the probability distribution of this y as an integrated version of this process. But in this case, the probability distribution is a mixture that we have atom of probability with the inactivity time, and we have a proportion part of the human movement. And in this case, to using kernel methods, first we estimate with an naive estimator of empirical distribution the proportion of inactivity, and after with the rest of the part, we estimate the human part of the human movement conditional to the inactivity time. And now we start to speak about uncertainty quantification. That is the main topic of this talk. After that, we motivating that in this new digital health era, we have new emerging biomarkers that many times are defined in metric space. And first of all, emphasize the importance of uncertainty quantification in science or for arts in general. As say Bertrand Russell, probability is the most important concept in modern science because, especially as nobody has the least notion of what it means. And for this reason, today uncertainty quantification is the prominent area of research in statistical and machine learning communities, in special with the recent progress of the field of conformal predictions. Conformal prediction is a general framework for uncertainty quantification proposed by Vladimir Bok, the last student of Andrei Kolmorov and another co-authors. And now, we are, because with the proliferation of data-driven systems, we are evolving for a statistical modeling that evolution from a post-weight estimations to a interval predictions or a prediction ranges, because we cannot, there are a lot of uncertainty in real-world applications, and we cannot provide a number to summarize the output of the model, and we must predict uncertainty quantification measures in terms, for example, of bands of uncertainty, prediction intervals, or other measures of uncertainty. From a medical perspective, in general, there are a large uncertainty because when you try to create a risk score, we are a lot of uncertainty about the patient evolution, as is logical. For example, if I try to predict the time to diabetes, in these 5 years, the patient can increase a lot of the body mass index or another biomarker. And when we try to predict things in medicine, there are a lot of large uncertainty in general. But this is not necessarily bad for modeling perspective. But for example, if we have a predictive model and the model is subject to a large uncertainty, we can use in this uncertainty to healthcare planning, because if we know that these patients have uncertainty behavior, we can plan in more different longitudinal follow-ups over the time with more complex medical tests and aggregate more complex source of information to the model to increase the capacity prediction of the models and reduce the uncertainty. And this is not necessarily uncertainties again that we must use in the practice to incorporate and improve the way that we do the healthcare planning. And in the statistical literature and machine learning, there are 3 main methods to quantify the uncertainty. The first, and is automatic to quantify the uncertainty, are the Bayesian methods. That is provide a general framework for uncertainty quantification, but they have the inherent problem that the prior selections. Another popular approach to provide prediction intervals in the statistical literature is the Politis bootstrap approach, that is motivated by asymptotic Gaussian approximations, and maybe we can introduce some parametric or non-parametric bootstrap to derive prediction regions. And another topic is using the conformal prediction, that is the framework that we mentioned before, created by Vladimir Bok and another co-authors, that provide a general framework a non-parametric general framework to quantify the uncertainty in general settings. And here we show two pictures that I appear with Vladimir Bok, the creator of conformal prediction, and with Emmanuel Kander, one of the most reputed research in this area in the latest times, that have important works with Rojita Barbet about conformal prediction beyond exchangeability or in time series context. And now I will try to introduce a high-level intuition about what is conformal prediction. Suppose that we have a random sample then, that we observe n random observations X and Y. X denotes the predictor and Y the response. And the magic of conformal prediction is that you can have non-asymptotic guarantees of this time independent of the regression model that we're using. Basically, we have a new pair X and Y. I suppose that for simplicity that is IID identically distributed than this random sample. And we have this super bound that the new pair XY is in the prediction region constructed with conformal prediction satisfy this bound. That we have the prediction region that we define for some alpha between 0 and 1 contain the new random observation X and Y with probability equal to 1 minus alpha for the alpha level that we are searching. And we have this non-asymptotic result for any model, even if the regression model that we're using to approximate the regression function and to construct the prediction region is bad. We have a very weak prediction intervals or very high, not optimal prediction regions. But also we have this theoretical guarantee that we have a new random pair X and Y, and with probability at least 1 minus alpha is inside of this prediction region. And this result is independent of the regression model that we use, and we have these results only with the hypothesis that the random sample that we observe to construct the prediction region is exchangeable. And now conformal prediction are using, for example, in another settings in Bayesian statistics, for example, to calibrate better the coverage of Gaussian process when we do statistical inference with Bayesian methods such as Gaussian process. And well, this is a very fast introduction of conformal prediction, but we have these non-asymptotic properties that is a very strong result for many scientific applications and produce a trustworthy result for data-driven systems in a lot of contexts. And now I will start to presenting my work about uncertainty quantification in metric space, motivated for the analyzing of these digital biomarkers that explained before, such as density functions, probability distributions, or another complex data structures that appear in digital health as graph. This work was done in collaboration with Gabor Lugosi, and we proposed the first general framework for uncertainty quantifications for regression models that are defined in metric space. And we are motivating the use of this model, even as a theoretical paper, for applications in digital health. This paper and the idea to work in conformal prediction in metric space was motivated for exploration of real-world clinical sample, and born with a conversation with Vladimir Bok to analyze conformal prediction methods in functional space. For example, if we back to the glucose quantile distributional representations, we feature some patient characteristics of and we modify the body mass index. Suppose that we have two patients with similar characteristics and we modify the body mass index to 20 to 30, and the conditional mean of a specific regression model for this quantile output, the black line, is the same, but the uncertainty changes a lot with the change of body mass index. And motivated by these changes in uncertainty in several patients that have the same conditional mean value, but the uncertainty evolves a lot, I decided to explore more this type, and I spoke with Vladimir Bok and another research, and the initial discussions was about creating new data-depth methods for conformal prediction, that we have another paper about based on this idea of using data depth for conformal prediction. But basically the idea to create a conformal prediction algorithm for metric space, board for a clinical application for CGN data analysis. And this is our mathematical context. We suppose that we share a random pair X and Y. X for simplicity is the space X. For simplicity, we suppose that it's a multidimensional Euclidean space, and the space Y is a separable metric space. To define well the regression model, we must introduce some moment conditions to, for example, the quadratic, the square of the distance of this expectation infinitive. And we can define under these regulated conditions some notion of regression model in metric space. And basically, because the response is in a metric space and only we have a distance, we define the regression model as minimize this expectation of the square of the distance, conditional to the point x that we do the prediction. And this is our definition of regression function because we suppose that the metric space is equipped with the distance they want. And in the literature, this regression function that is defined in terms of the minimized the quadratic of the distance is called the conditional Frechet mean.
Sorry, Marcus, can I
Yeah.
ask a question here? Like, what is the difference between this, what you show in equation 1, and just normal regression, normal least squares regression?
For example, if we replace this distance for the quadratic distance and we have scalar biomarkers, this is the definition in the scalar case of y is a scalar variable corresponding with the regression operator. But we express, for example, you have the regression model, the function n, for example, the conditional mean. If we replace this distance with the square of the distance with the Euclidean distance, we recover the traditional conditional mean operator.
So it's something more general than...
Yes, it's more general because we analyze functions or graph,
Okay.
and the way to compare the objects is with a similarity function that is a distance function.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, but you replace the Euclidean distance, for example, in separable Hilbert space, with the distance induced for the dot product, we recover the classical linear regression models, the classical regression models. And we can express any classical linear regression or any classical regression model in terms of some specific distance. And for example, also we can express the median regression in terms of this distance, because the Frechet median is a particular case of Frechet mean. And now the question is that we have a regression function in general metric space is define a prediction set. And to do this, we must define what is for us our prediction regions. Our prediction regions, we define the prediction regions in metric space as a mathematical ball of center the regression function and some radius that can depend of the point x that we do the prediction. And we are considered the closest balls in this definition, and the radius because we must predict a prediction radius for a confidence level alpha between 0 and 1. We define the radius as the minimal positive number r, such that the ball the response is contained in the ball conditional to the point s with a probability equal to 1 minus alpha. This is our definition of prediction region in metric space, and these are our level sets to do the predictions and define the prediction regions. And to define conformal prediction in metric space, we obtain to do, for simplicity, based on conformal split, but basically we do a random split of the original sample. We have a random sample of n elements, and we do a random split in the first split, two random split. In the first split, we estimate the regression function n, and in the second split, you calibrate the radius r, and that modulate the number of points that there are in the prediction regions. And basically, this is a standard in conformal prediction to obtain non-asymptotic results, do a data splitting, and each model component is estimated in the independent split. And this is very important because the conformal prediction algorithms depend if the signal noise of the model is respect to the distribution x and y is homoscedastic or heteroscedastic. And for example, if the probability that the y be in the ball conditional to the point x is independent to the point x, we define the regression function respect to the pair x and y as homoscedastic. And in this case, we have a specific algorithms that we have a good properties. For example, with this definition of homoscedasticity, this involves the classical regression models. For example, we estimate the conditional mean with the random error equal to 0, but the random error not depend of a specific variance function than depend of the input parameter x, the covariance, And this definition, we introduce the notion of homoscedasticity in metric space. The notion generalizes the classical notion of homoscedastic in the classical linear models that have additive structure in vector value space. And these models we can rewrite in terms of the objective function to obtain this regression function can be writing as answer the question of the moderator of general perspective in terms of some distant function. This is our classical regression setting and with the additive structure, and we can introduce this as a particular case of our metric space formulation. And this is the key steps of the homoscedastic algorithm for using conformal prediction. In the first split, we estimate the regression function n tilde, and we define, because we don't have residuals in metric space in general, we define this special of pseudo residuals as the distance can be another distance, it's not necessarily the distance that you're using to obtain the regression function. And you obtain these pseudo residuals. And using these pseudo residuals, the distance to the response to the regression function, we estimate a quantile of calibration that is related with the radius of the ball. We estimate for this pseudo residual empirical distribution, we obtain the quantile with empirical distribution, and we define the relation of the ball with the estimated regression function and the quantile of calibration that we obtain from the empirical distribution functions. And using this strategy, we have the non-classical, non-asymptotic results of conformal predictions, that in this case, the probability is respect to the pace x and y and the random sample then, these randoms, and we have the non-asymptotic guarantee that we mentioned before. But this is for metric, for outcomes or predictors in metric space.
Sorry, Marcus, I think we have Christian, you have raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Marcus. Just to be sure that I understand correctly, do we have the marginal guarantees, whatever the distance? I'm struggling to understand the impact of the distance. Yeah.
Yes, we have a regression model in metric space that depends on distance they want, and you can define some pseudo residuals in terms of another distance, because for a visualization purpose, you can have another distance. For example, suppose that the output is a functional data in L2 space. To visualize the prediction regions, you can use in another distance, for example, to the radius calibration, because, for example, if you have a functional space, you can use in the supremum north to represent the graphical the prediction regions, and you estimate with some distance the regression model, and you have another distance for visualize the prediction regions, or using another distance for the radius, because you can obtain another mathematical properties. For example, you can use a better distance than the rectangular region with less volume, or another geometrical property.
Okay, yeah, I see.
It's more because you have the ball, the regression function depends on the distance they want, and the radius depends on another distance, and it can be for different reasons. For example, in multivariate data, you can use a specific marginal obvious distance, suppose, to minimize the volume of the region that you have with the ball, or you can use the supremum distance to modulate the radius, because you can visualize the region in very easy way.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for the question. And also we have some theoretical results about consistent results under very general conditions. For example, the integral consistency of the regression function is conditional to the train, the existence of the quantile in the Oracle definition respect to this distribution function of the distance. And basically, we have some consistent results that generalize the paper of Jin Lei and Larry Wasserman in JASA 6 years ago in 2018. But we are introducing not conditions about the symmetry of random error. We are only have minimal conditions when we do the theory that this is the quantile and that the regression function is consistent in this general context. And here, when we have this result, we have as error the symmetrical error respect to the estimator and the Oracle prediction region that we define as the ball with the center, the two regression function, and the radius function that depends on this quantile function. of the distance. Okay, this is endomorphic case. In metric space, suppose that the model, in general metric space, that the model is homoscedastic is very restrictive, and in a lot of regression applications, and in say in the classical setting of conformal prediction, we must introduce specific conformal prediction algorithms for the heteroscedastic algorithms. And in this case, the idea is estimate in the first split the regression function, but in the second part, we estimate a radius of calibration conditional to the point X with empirical distribution function, and for this purpose, we're using the networks. And we're using a KNN method, the K-nearest network method, to estimate the radius. And this is not a non-conformal prediction algorithm, but we have also strong results, and we have convergence rates, the same of the homoscedastic case. And basically, it's very intuitive. You estimate the regression function, and after you estimate the radius of the ball with the KNN method. It's very simple, and in several space cases, for example, in additive and localization space, we can have a very fast rates with this type of modeling strategies of two-step methods. Okay, and in the of course, to use this in the practice, we need a regression model in metric space, and for practical purpose in the application that we use now, we focus in the global fetched model in metric space, that is a generalization of linear regression model to metric space response. And basically, the idea is a weighting mean estimator for a point X to obtain the conditional mean expectation. We solve this optimization problem in metric space that depend of this distance day one and the square of distance day one. And we introduce some, in the weighting mean function, some constraint about the weights. And the weights, because these models is a generalization of linear model, are predefined for this type of Mahalanobis type of distance, where x hat is the sample mean, and the covariance operator, and we estimate the inverse of the covariance operator with the sample naive covariance operator. This is the global fetched model. This is the empirical estimator for the global fetched model that depend of the metric space that we are working, and the predictors are in infinite dimensional space. And we are using this model in the applications to approximate the regression function M. And now I will illustrate the model in metric space in some relevant medical examples. For example, an interesting question in neurological disease nowadays is do a visual test, a writing test with a tablet, for example. And here we define a tolerance ranges or prediction ranges for a patients that have known neurological conditions. We're writing a tablet following the instructions of a test, and we have the writing trajectories in the tablet, and we try with shape analysis provide a prediction ranges of the shape writing in patients with non-neurological conditions belonging to the control group, or a patient with a Parkinson, a neurological disorder that in this case corresponding to Parkinson's disease, and we define these predictive regions conditional to the group status for different confidence levels, alpha equal to 0.75 that contain the 30% of the trajectories, or 0.5 that contain the 0.5% of the trajectories. And this is, well, here for visualization purpose, we're using in the regression model the Euclidean distance, that is equivalent to using a traditional conditional mean regression models. But for visualization purpose in the distance D2, we're using the supremum distance, because it's more easy to visualize, and we have 15 patients in the control group and 30 patients in the diagnosis group with Parkinson's disease. And only represent these uncertainty quantification sets about the shape writing in the control and Parkinson group with a confidence level of alpha 0.7 and evaluating if the patient is inside or not of the region. We can discriminate between two diseases with area under curve of more of 0.75. Only with this unsupervised stage that we examine the expected behavior of the shape writing in the machine, we can discriminate with high probability a patient that have Parkinson or no, only with a graphical test of the shape writing in the tablet. Here we have another example. In this case, the outcome is a bidimensional random variable in R2, the first component is the fasting plasma glucose, and the second component is the glucose-like hemoglobin. These are the main biomarkers to diagnose and control the progression of diabetes mellitus. And to have a clear intuition about our method do, we select as a distance the Euclidean in the regression model and in the radius estimation D2, the Euclidean distance. And for 3 patients with different 3 characteristics, we have here the uncertainty levels, and here we have a clear intuition that we are using mathematical balls centered in the conditional mean estimations and some radius that depend of the square of the distance of the residuals. And according to the patient characteristics, we have different levels of uncertainties. That is depend in this example of some demographic and anthropometric characteristic of the patients. But this is a clear intuition about we define conformal prediction algorithms. We using in metric space, we using mathematical goals, we estimate the regression function, and we calibrate the radius based on some distance of the residuals or some distance to the residuals in this Euclidean example, or some distance between the real value and the regression function. Okay, and for example, in the quantile example, we are interested in defining normative values on CGM data. The outcome in this case is a quantile function of the glucose time series, as we introduced in the first part of this talk. And for different age groups, we establish the prediction regions. We fit a regression model for different age groups with the outcome a quantile function of CGM time series, and we can observe that for different age groups, the conditional mean is the same, but the uncertainty evolves with the age. For some confidence level alpha that is predefined. And this meaning that in the practice, the uncertainty evolves for different age groups. And this is normal because the glucose evolves with the age, and it's normal that the uncertainty rise with the age. But these have important conclusions because the diagnosis criteria, for example, for diabetes based on digital biomarkers, for the CGM time series must be using according to the patient characteristics. And this can have important inclusions, but this is a sample that modeling and provide prediction regions for quantile outcomes for different age groups. And that this is very important in many biomedical applications because we can know the expected behavior of the normative values of the outcomes, and here the outcome is a quantile function. And here the same considerations. And as to conclude the mathematical session of this talk, we illustrate as we can use in conformal prediction in metric space to derive new personalized imputation criteria. And now is our clinical context of our problem. Our general problem is that we have a 2-sample study. We have a 1,200 individuals with diabetes, and a subsample of 2,200 individuals, we have 500 individuals that were a continuous glucose monitor. And because we can obtain a more powerful model, we are interested in inputting the remaining 1,700 patients the continuous glucose monitoring information that is missing because the individuals not were the CN. And the goal is input in the remaining 1,700 individuals the CGM information and create a predictive model to the time to diabetes in these non-diabetes individuals based on the information of continuous glucose monitoring that there are some scientific evidence that provide more information that classical, that provide more information about the glucose metabolism. And here the question, and it's very natural, is that we can input the data, but the imputation have some uncertainty, and we can derive the post-weight imputation, input the data, but we can derive the prediction ranges for each imputation. And if the prediction ranges related with each imputation observation is very large, there are a lot of uncertainty, this information is not useful. And for this reason, it's important, for this reason, if there are uncertainty in imputation information is not useful, we define using conformal prediction some imputation criteria. And the high-level idea of this is that there are a lot of the radius of the conformal prediction algorithm is very large. We cannot input, and to define if it's large or no the radius, we must some formal mathematical criteria, that is the parameter C. And the parameter C is calculated using cross-validation using a survival model. Basically, if we input data observation, we have the radius of the prediction regions according to conformal prediction in metric space. And if the radius of each individual imputation is large or than C, we discard imputation. In another case, we accept this imputation. This is similar to reject learning. And to calibrate the threshold C parameter, we using in terms of capacity prediction. And using this, and here is the intuition. We have the prediction of the quantile function in 4 patients. The quantile function of 4 patients. In some cases, there are more than 30. For example, in prediabetes and diabetes individuals, there are more than 30. And we determine the maximum radius that we can accept or not the imputation. And this is the idea of our method. And for this, we're using a Cox model to determine the maximum radius that we allow to input or not observations. And here, we show that with this personalized imputation criteria that incorporate more samples than the 400 individuals in the dataset with the imputation dataset that are affected in the learning. We compare the capacity prediction in the 9 years of prediction time, because we have a follow-up of 9 years of area under curve in terms of dynamic area under curve over the time. In this line, we have the classical model with the classical diabetes biomarkers. In this line, we have the model with all patients that have continuous glucose monitoring. And this, we have the capacity prediction of the model over the time in terms of area under curve of the model that we introduce on imputation observations, but according to our personalized imputation criteria. And this show that using our mathematical method of personalized imputation, we can obtain more capacity prediction because we are calculating these metrics out of the sample, and we perform in 13% more the capacity prediction using this personalized imputation that a model that not incorporate imputation observation and only consider the information of the patient that have the CGM monitor, and also win the model that not incorporate CGM information. And as a conclusion, I will like that we are in a critical situation for humanity because there are important public health challenges and the healthcare systems are weak as evidenced in the pandemic, and new strategies based on digital health solutions are important. And some challenges that we have in this century that we must use in innovative data-driven systems are, for example, the topic of sedentary behavior or obesity that have an important economic cost in the healthcare systems, for example, as illustrated in this slide in UK. Another important problem is the chronic disease as diabetes, the comorbidities. Here the animation, but it's not working, I don't know why. Diabetes, and that have a very important cost in the healthcare systems in the world. And the situation of economic cost will be increased because for the sedentary of the population and the increase of the sedentary lifestyles, the cost of this will be worse in the future, and the situation and the burden of the healthcare system will be worse. And another thing is the aging. I don't know because we're not working this animation, but the aging in Europe is a critical problem that we reformulate economic in the Union Europe. And with in 30 years, the average age of the Union Europe is in around 45 years old. And with the elderly population, we need another reformulation of the healthcare systems, and the using of digital health technologies is fundamental for these problems. And as a final remarks about this presentation, we introduce a general framework for uncertainty quantification in metric space. They have good properties with theoretical analysis, and these properties are support for different simulation studies. And the different results that we obtain in the different applications show that we need personalized approach, conditional to the patient characteristics, to modeling in a good way the different clinical problems that we analyze. And the methods that we show here work with minimal conditions and achieving a very fast convergence rates about different settings. And thank you very much for the attention. This is the context of all my presentation, and if any have any question, I am very happy to answer.
Well, thank you so much, Marcus, for the talk. I personally don't have any questions from the audience. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Yeah, okay. Looks like we don't have any questions. Thank you again, Marcus. The recording will be available on the channel if you guys want to watch it one more time. But other than that, we can now end this call. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.